Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to be more basic in some of my questions, and to understand we're about, in the next month or two, to have to make one of the most difficult, maybe not difficult, the most profound decisions of our careers, and that has to do with whether, in fact, we allocate approximately $6 billion for a potentially 130-mile stretch in the Central Valley. That's where we started. And I have looked in the past to all sorts of data that have come in to kind of help me understand how can I act as both a proponent of high-speed rail, but somebody who also has to engage and be fiscally responsible to the people of California and to engage in as low a risk strategy as possible, when in fact there are lots and lots of unanswered questions. So the first thing is, a few months ago you did the peer review report in which you did not recommend that we fund this. You said it's a high-risk strategy just to spend $6 billion in the Central Valley. There are other options. This high-speed rail authority has come back. They have made some, as you point out, some revisions. It's much more of a systemic change. They understand we're not just doing a high-speed rail separate. We are really now doing a statewide passenger rail service that will be able to be used by high-speed rail, and that there will be, and they have already also looked at putting some more resources where there is ridership at the beginning, fixing down by the bookends, whether we call it where there is the commuter rail services. But we're still faced with the fact, and now you've changed your thing. You did not say not to fund it any longer. You've now changed it. And to me, what has changed, and I have some questions, is that they've added more money from this. We still have that $6 billion for this project, and I need some answers. We still have $6 billion for this Central Valley project, which may not even now, after reading the review, be able to go all the way from Madera to Bakersfield. It may start up by Madera and not even get to Bakersfield. So we have this potentially 130 miles, still that $6 billion. We then have a big gap between Bakersfield and the San Fernando Valley. We haven't fixed that. That's still out there. And then we have the bookends. So they've added now some money for the bookends and this overall understanding. We're still short. If we take all the money that's left, maybe we have $4.5 billion, and then we spend all the state's funds and the federal funds, all $13 billion. But we still have a huge $10 to $15 billion gap that we don't have. Why? How can you reassure me that we're still not funding a stranded system out there, that for 10 years, where in the financial plan do I get some reassurance that now this is no longer a high-risk strategy by starting in the Central Valley? It's a lower-risk strategy. I don't understand your thinking, how you move that way, because I still need to be convinced that this is a lower-risk strategy. I still see tremendous potential for having a system that's out there without federal government improving, because now they're talking about at least $10 billion from the federal government. I don't see any commitments, anything in writing, anything about any commitments coming from anybody. Just go forward, and maybe cap and trade will make up $10 billion in the next 10 years? Is that what you're saying? That was the change in your thinking, was the $10 billion coming from cap and trade? That moved us to lower risk? Because I have tremendous risk about cap and trade.
And Senator, if you have a risk about cap and trade, what we've recommended in our report that you will receive later this week is that you need to be assured that those funds are viable, that they can be used for this purpose, and that there will be an amount sufficient.
How do we do that to future legislators?
Well,
how do we make a commitment that we're taking money that was originally developed for something else, we're going to use it for this? Do we have a full commitment for or else how do we fix that gap, or am I voting on something that potentially could be a stranded system?
There is that potential. There is that risk that with the money that is currently available that you would end up with a stranded system, which we do not support.
So why aren't we starting
Our tune hasn't changed, Senator. We're saying, however, that given, and we didn't just take the statement relative to cap and trade, we actually went and met with the administration officials on the availability of the cap and trade. Not that they are the decision makers necessarily. In fact, I think that rests with this body. However, they did indicate that there would be amounts of dollars in the necessary range to provide for at least completing that initial operating segment, to provide for that connected system.
We're talking about at least a minimum of an additional $10 billion.
Something along those lines in terms of over the next several years.
So I should be voting for this because supposedly there's a $10 billion coming.
Again, we say in our report that you need to feel assured that those dollars are viable and that they are.
Do you feel assured? I rely on you.
Senator, I spoke to the administration, to the Director of the Department of Finance, to others. I think there is a reasonable chance that those dollars will be available. It's no guarantee. I can't make that guarantee, and it is a risk. But that is the reason that our recommendations...
So when they have said they're recommending 56% of the funding to come from the federal government, what you're saying is the administration now is saying for the first $20 billion the state will pay $17 billion in the feds. So we're paying almost 90% of the cost.
I don't think, Senator...
That's exactly what they're saying. If we can't get it anywhere else, we'll pick up the cost. I do not know that that's the commitment
Senator,
we had with the people.
I don't think the administration has said that. I think what they have said is that cap and trade would be a backstop.
And what's the front stop?
Assuming that there would be additional federal or other state resources. We don't see any
I don't either. That's why that's what I'm asking. I want to vote for this.
So if that is the backstop, then maybe that becomes, as you referred to it, the front stop. And it's the potential availability of those dollars, if they are indeed going to be available.
So if that's what we do, we need to tell the public that this is not a really public-private partnership. This is almost a fully funded state project out of our general fund.
Here's the...
that's what we have to be honest and tell people.
I think that's accurate, Senator, with respect to construction of the initial operating segment.
So we could be on the hook for 17 of the 20-some-odd to get a segment that operates.
Yes.
And we have to be real clear. I haven't heard anybody say that.
Yes, you could be. The state could be. But once you reach that IOS, again, questions of O&M costs and that sort of thing, then there is the opportunity to attract private investment and to start generating revenue.
After we've put up potentially all that money, after telling the public that we were going to have this partnership, but it's all right for the federal government, who's only putting up $3 billion, to dictate to us where it starts, but they're not coming up with any other money. We're putting up all the money. Doesn't something about this seem unfair?
To be frank, Senator, yes. And we ourselves communicated with the federal government and the federal agency on several occasions to see if there was any way in which that decision could be addressed a second time to not start in the Central Valley.
Right. And I have asked for that following, John. I have asked for a letter from the High-Speed Rail Authority and others regarding how you delink the state money from the federal money. We're the only state in our application that said we would do a match. That wasn't part of the RF. The federal government wants to spend the $3 billion in the Central Valley. Go do it. I think it still could be there are risks. But for us who are putting up who put up the most amount in terms of the bond, who potentially are the most at risk, for us to be told that we have to spend our money there without any assurances that there's any other money coming from the federal government or anyone else seems to me a high-risk strategy. And I would have liked, just what you're saying, to have seen some action coming from the state of California that we will spend money, but let's spend it down where we have ridership now. if we have to do a match, but for us to have to put the money exactly where they're starting, when I see no reason in terms of policy, there are some benefits to having the spine, I get it, but when you have no other money, you darn well had better be cautious. And I think we have a gun to our head by the federal government. We get very little back from them. I support this project, but what a way to do business. And now we're talking about, with no other commitments, we'll put up another $10 billion in cap and trade, and yet they're dictating the terms of this deal. Seems crazy to me.
If I may just comment, Senator, I think what Senator Simitian's previous comment about we're living with the decisions that were made over the previous 3.5 years, unfortunately, has brought us to this point. As we've stated in our previous reports, we feel that filling the gap that exists in the rail line between Bakersfield and Palmdale would have been the highest priority item.
Absolutely. The only logical, rational policy, you link the Central Valley to the urban area. You don't link the Central Valley to the Central Valley.
Senator Simiti, did you have something on?